Hi, this is Grandma, and I'm reading The Iron Ring by Lloyd Alexander. It is a legend from India, and today I'm going to begin with Chapter 5, Naga Raja. In Chapter 4, Tamar has run into a problem. He tried to save a monkey, Hashkat, who's fighting with I assume a python or a cobra, a very large snake, and he has somehow made a compromise with the snake that they will wrestle to determine who is right, the monkey or the snake. So that's where we're starting, is they're going to wrestle. Because the snake is right, it wouldn't be fair for them to have a sword fight because the snake can't hold a sword. So, Naga Raja. Naga means snake, and the snake is, his name is Shisha, and he is, says he's the king of the Naga. Raja means king, queen, ruler. So he's the king of the snakes. No, that won't do at all. Rajaswami raised a protesting hand. My dear Prince Shesha, you complained of being at a disadvantage. What you propose is entirely to your own advantage. The match is grossly unfair. There, you see how he is, put in Hashcat, who left off grooming his long and luxuriant furry tail. Sneaky and slippery. Of course he'd choose wrestling with those wriggling, writhing coils. He'd have it all his way. I suggest a foot race. Be silent, ordered Shisha. You have no say in this. And you, my boy, Rashaswami added to Tamar, I'm not certain it would be proper for you to take the risk. After all, you have a previous engagement, so to speak. Oh, by the code of honor, a warrior doesn't refuse a challenge, replied Tamar. Perhaps I can think of some exception to that rule, said Rajaswami. No discussion, the Naga prince hissed. No hair-splitting excuses. Oh, a fine one to talk of hair, murmured Hashcat, curling a long upper lip, bald from head to tail. These are my terms, Shisha went on, ignoring the monkey. We wrestle in the water. Oh, really, Prince, you go too far, Rajaswami interrupted. There are even more at home than on land. Let him continue, Tamar said, and make his challenge clear. If, even for an instant, you bring any part of me to dry ground, said the Naga prince, I withdraw my claim. If you fail, or if you choose to give up the contest, his life is forfeit. Agreed and accepted, and you, King of Monkeys, Tamar said, stay here until the match is decided. What? Cried Hashcat. I sit and cool my heels, my life in the balance, while you two flop around in a river. Majesty, with all respect, suppose you lose. I'm expected to give myself into his hands? What hands? And he's swallowed up or squeezed into a pulp? You'll wait with Rajaswami, Tamar ordered. I want your solemn vow as a king. Oh, of course, Hashcat grumbled. I know all about king's solemn vows. See that you keep yours, Tamar stripped off his buckskin, shed his sandals while Hashcat hunkered down on the bank. The Naga prince had already slithered into the river, leaving barely a ripple in his wake. Tamar plunged after him. No sooner was he in the water than he realized his mistake. He had misjudged the swiftness of the current and had to fight against it even before grappling with Shisha. He shook his dripping hair from his eyes. At first he saw nothing of the serpent. When he did glimpse Shisha's head surfacing for a moment, he understood that he had made yet another miscalculation. The Naga prince intended to stay in the middle of the river, making it all the more difficult for Tamar to force him to either shore. Strong swimmer though he was, by the time he reached the spot where he had seen Shisha, Tamar's muscles ached with the strain of battling the current. The Naga prince had vanished. Treading water, Tamar cast around for Shisha. Suddenly, the river churned into foam. Shisha's tail lashed around Tamar's waist. Next instant, he was being dragged toward the river bottom. The Naga prince, Tamar realized, had chosen to fight not in the water, but under it. Before Shisha could throw another coil around him, Tamar squeezed free and shot to the surface, filling his lungs with air as the serpent turned and attacked. His best hope, he calculated, was to swim for shore, staying always a little out of reach, luring the Naga prince into the shallows. Kicking his legs, sweeping his arms, Tamar struck out for the green line of the riverbank. Shisha writhed ahead of him, swung around to block his way, then lunged to seize him. Tamar flung himself aside as water roiled around him and once more made for the river's edge. Shisha, however, gripped him by a leg and plunged downward. Mud and gravel from the river bottom swirled in a yellow-brown cloud. Tamar, blinded, could not tell whether he was grasping Shisha's head or tail, but he threw himself astride the scaly body and clung as to a bucking horse. The Naga prince heaved up and down, thrashing first one way, then another to dislodge the rider. Their struggle brought them to the surface, but Tamar had only a moment of breath before Shisha dove again, straight to the riverbed, and there rolled over, slithering through weeds and water plants across jagged rocks, seeking to scrape Tamar loose. Here, Shisha made his own miscalculation. The serpent lunged through a tangle of dead branches that clawed Tamar away, but left the Naga prince trapped amid the limbs as if caught in a net. Tamar floated free. He glimpsed Shisha flailing vainly in the mesh of branches. The Naga prince halted a moment, swung his head around, and stared coldly. Tamar hesitated. He had only to swim upward into air and sunlight, leaving Shisha below in a death trap. The serpent was watching him without a sign of surrender or a plea for help, only that flat, steady gaze. A few strokes brought Tamar in the imprisoning branches. Holding what breath he had left, he threw all his strength against the underwater thicket, while Shisha heaved and strained until the limbs gave way. Tamar kicked clear of them and headed for the surface. The Naga prince seized him. For all his outraged struggles, his fury at betrayal instead of gratitude, Tamar could not escape. Shisha bore him further along the riverbed. Lungs ready to burst, Tamar found himself dragged into a black tunnel. The passageway curved downward, turned up sharply, first one way, then another. Tamar could breathe again. The water had fallen away. Shisha wriggled into the wide shelf of what seemed like the mouth of a cavern. Still gripping Tamar, the serpent slid through the arching entrance and unwound his coils. Panting, Tamar stumbled to his feet and turned angry and questioning on Shisha. "You have broken off our contest, Prince Shisha. Do you dare claim to have won?" "Our combat is unfinished," Shisha declared. "But since you saved my life, I fight no more against you. As there is no clear victor, I leave it to my father to say in his wisdom where justice lies." Shisha motioned with his head. At the far end of the cavern, two huge serpents lay on thrones of carved crystal. Both wore crowns encrusted with jewels. The chamber itself blazed with gems set into the walls and heaped high in every corner. Tamar stared at the dazzling stones. "Where have you brought me?" "To the heart of Naga Raja," replied Shisha. "This is the place of my father and mother." The elder serpent stretched up and spread his hood. Now that's on a cobra. That's the sides that come out. His ancient scales were thick, heavy as armor, gleaming and twinkling as he swayed erect. His tongue flicked in and out, while his voice came as a long, sighing whisper. "Approach. Approach, King of Sundari. I am Taksha, the Naga Raja, and here my revered wife, Sheila Rani." "How do you know me?" Tamar stepped closer to the thrones. On either side he saw other serpents, the Naga courtiers and attendants, coiled and looking at him in silent curiosity. "You have been observed many times," Taksha replied. "The domain of the Naga Raja reaches through all waterways, through all rivers and lakes. We see you here and there in Sundari when you take your ease at a woodland pool or ramble along a stream." The doings of a small king of a small kingdom should hardly interest the Naga folk, Tamar said. "The deeds of kings are always of interest," said Takshaka, "to others if not to themselves. The actions of the powerful have bearing on all around them." "This is true," Sheila Rani said. "Listen. One day, beside a brook, a half-grown boy played in the grass and laughed with joy to see a naga hatching from its shell. The lad was strong and fearless and could well have crushed the feeble snake beneath his heel, without a single thought or need to feel remorse or grief. But no, he turned aside and let the naga live. That might have died. That new naga was Prince Shisha, explained Sheila Rani, and you were that half-grown boy. "Well, if I left him unharmed, I'm glad," replied Tamar, "but I remember nothing of that day." "Oh, we remember. We Naga are an ancient folk. We have seen much. Little happens in your human realm that escapes our notice, and we forget nothing." "Even so," said Sheila, "we are puzzled to find you in our kingdom." "Well, I begin a long journey," Tamar said. "Allow me to continue it." "Not yet," said Shisha. "We wrestled over the life of Hashkat, the one who calls himself King of the Badaloka," he added to Takshaka. "And now you to judge us. Why concern yourself with foolish monkey folk?" asked the Naga Raja. "I am concerned when anyone dares to steal what is mine," said Shisha, beginning his account of what happened on the riverside. When he had finished, Tamar offered his own. "All that Prince Shisha tells is true," he concluded. "Whether Hashkat would have stolen the gem or given it back, I do not know. I cannot guess his intentions. In any case, the gem was not stolen. Prince Shisha has it still, and he has lost nothing. Should Hashkat be punished for what he might have intended, but did not do? Perhaps, perhaps not. Either way, it should not cost him his life. I say no more than that." Prince Shisha acted correctly, the Naga Raja declared. He was greatly offended. It was his right. Indeed, his dharma required it. Correct, yes, but only to a point. The punishment would have gone beyond that point. The Naga Raja turned to Shisha. You allowed your wrath to overwhelm you. That was an offense against reason. You should have used power against the powerless. That, my son, was an offense against compassion. In the light of these considerations, hear my judgment. The monkey's life is to be spared. I am reprimanded. Shisha bowed his head. You have spoken in your wisdom. Let it be as you have decided. And you, King of Sundari, put in Sheila Rani, we are curious to know what led you to the encounter. A journey, you say. What is the nature of it? A dream, Tamar said after describing his night in the palace. Sometimes I think it is nothing more. Yet, when I see the ring on my finger, I must believe it happened, then only doubt and wonder again. Can you help me? He went on. Your domain reaches far and wide. Do you know of King Jaya or Mahapura? That would assure me there is such a person at least. Only vague rumors, nothing more, answered Takashaka. I am saddened I cannot ease your heart. I too, Tamar said. Now let me join my Acharya and Hashkat. The monkey will be glad to hear your judgment. You have my leave, the Naga Raja said. Prince Shisha will guide you through the passageways. First, as token of our goodwill, choose gems from any that you see here. Thank you, replied Tamar, but your goodwill needs no token. Where I go, I have no need of jewels. Will you dishonor us by refusing an offered gift? Said Sheila Rani. Take as many as you please, King of Sundari. Takshaki likewise insisted, so obliged. Tamar went to the heaps of precious stones, scanning one after the other. Among them glittered diamonds, bigger even than Jaya's. Any one of them would have made his kingdom rich. If he broke off his journey and brought his treasure back to Sundari, he wondered if it was his karma to do so, and if this was the purpose of the dream. Ruefully, he shook his head. His eye fell on the smallest of the gems, a ruby that fit easily into the palm of his hand as he bent and picked it up. I choose this one, he said, through your generosity is greater than any of your jewels. The Naga courtiers whispered among themselves. Takshaka nodded approval. You have chosen modestly without greed, the Naga Raja said. I commend you. Your choice is more interesting than you know. We call it fire flower. See the lotus curve carved on it? This is the most curious of our treasures. One of my people found it by chance in a lake bed and bore it to me. How or why it came to be there is a mystery. And may always be, added Sheila. Now it is yours. As Tamar pressed his palms together as the gesture of namaste to thank and honor the Nagas, Prince Shisha declared, I will take you back to the river. Tell the monkey he is fortunate that my father was more lenient than I. Tamar followed Shisha from the cavern and took firm hold of his tail as they slid through the tunnels. Once gaining the shallows, Shisha twisted away, leaving Tamar to find his footing amid the pebbles. and flat stones of the riverbed. The Naga prince vanished. Tamar stood, pulling off the strands of weeds clinging to his face before he could wipe the water from his eyes and clamber ashore. Laughter burst from the riverbank. Now, who do you think is laughing? Yeah, I think it's Hashkat. If you look at the map, you will see right here, Palace of Naga Raja. Right here. Right here is where we're going next, to Gorpus village. So he must have gone quite some distance holding onto the snake's tail. So you think that this is the end of our tale of Shisha and Hashkat? Or do you think we will hear from them again? What about this jewel? Fire flower. That sounds very mysterious, doesn't it? I think that sounds like there's some magic attached to it. We will see. Our next chapter is called A Beautiful Gopi. I think I pronounced it right. And if we look in the back, we see that Gopi is a young woman cow tender, milkmaid, dairymaid. So it's somebody who takes care of cows. Okay, that's all for now. Bye-bye.